Hello and welcome to another edition of Lifting Lowdown, the bi-weekly industry podcast brought to you by Lift Hoist International. My name is Guy Harris and I'm the publisher of LHI, the magazine servicing the global industrial lifting sector. Regular listeners will know that this podcast does not take the format of a straightforward interview, but invites industry representatives to openly discuss leading topics in a relaxed and friendly manner. In this episode, I caught up with my regular cohort Richard Howes of Bridger Howes, a PR and consultancy firm prevalent in the lifting and materials handling sectors, as well as his business partner Mark Bridger, at their offices to discuss marketing and some of the challenges companies face in promoting their brands, products and services in the current and wider climate. Let's get straight into it. Well guys, here we are in the same room recording another episode of Lifting Lowdown. Welcome back, Rich.
Yeah, it's good to be here, guys. Good to have you in the offices. It's a bit ominous that microphone you've brought with you. I thought we were just going to be catching up, talking about plans, and you've come always come prepared. I guess is your motto.
Well, I don't know about that, but I mean, yeah, it was in the car, and we've been speaking. We had a meeting, haven't we, guys, about clients and marketing and promotion and how LHI can help some of your clients. And really, we should have probably started this podcast about 45 minutes ago, but we thought we'd get the microphone out and have a chat and put together a lifting lowdown for our listeners. And Mark, welcome back to another edition, mate.
Yeah, no, it's nice to be here. Not planned, obviously. It's not often that Rich and I get together anyway, especially in the last few months. So, obviously, you know, I came today thinking we're talking about this, that and the other, and here we are. You've sort of hoodwinked me a little bit on this one, I think.
Well, you know.
Happy to be here. I get a bit jealous listening to you and Rich have all the fun.
Well, I don't know about that, Rich. There's a lot that goes into it, right?
Yeah, very hard work. Yeah, obviously.
Well, I certainly like our listeners to think that anyway. Well, look, I'm going to make my apologies now because Mark's just handed me a beer out of the Bridger House fridge. So, excuse me, I'm just going to crack one open. We've been waiting for a long time to do this.
Yeah.
So we thought we would talk a little bit about marketing and how agencies such as Bridger House can really help in terms of content. So let me fire straight out of the blocks and ask you this. Since the pandemic, how has marketing changed in your opinion? Has there been a notable shift, say, towards content over advertising, for example?
Do you want to take it, Mark, or do you want me to do it?
Well, we both can chip in, but I think what's really been noticeable, it's really apparent that since the onset of the pandemic, more businesses, that could be large or small corporate, are suddenly sort of paying more attention to certainly digital marketing channels. You know, it's quite amazing how many Instagram accounts have suddenly popped up. So I guess, you know, it's difficult for people to get in front of people. You can't do demos, you can't send your reps out on the road, you know, you need to keep your visibility. So I think it would be fair to say that companies are becoming more visible, but I think the problem is some are doing it well and others aren't doing it very well at all. And there's a lot of other avenues that you can look at. You know, social media marketing isn't the be or end all, and certainly it isn't really something that you should base your marketing strategy on.
Do you want to know what I think is interesting about this, guys? Is it hasn't really changed the fact that marketing has always been and is always going to be about audience, and pandemic or not, boom or bust, you've got an audience that you're trying to engage with your content, and ultimately it's about engaging them. The end goal is about that they make sales decisions and buying decisions to generate revenue for your company, isn't it? And I think what's been interesting over the last, we're going to no doubt touch on it, but I think what's been interesting over the last 10, 11 months has been how people, I think, have lost sight of that a little bit. And they've kind of jumped into some digital things, and they've thought, well, we'll stop doing this and we'll do that. And as Mark says, there's a lot more content on platforms like Instagram and LinkedIn, Twitter. There's a lot more digital stuff, but which is all good, and there is obviously some audiences to engage there to a larger or lesser extent. But first of all, regardless of the climate, you've got to say, who are we trying to reach, and how do we want them to react to our content? And you find where they're hanging out, and you put yourself there, and you engage, and you entertain, and you advise, and you educate, and at some point you might end up selling to them. But it's always about audience engagement, and I don't think that's particularly changed too much.
Do you think end users, purchasers of equipment, are active on, for example, Instagram, TikTok? Do you think they're looking to these marketing platforms, these promotional platforms, or these platforms that have in some cases been taken over by marketing professionals to present their products and services? Are people active on that? I mean, are they looking potentially for opportunities on those platforms? Do they find them by chance? Do they actively go on them to search for opportunities?
There's a lot of marketing people talking to marketing people on those platforms. So I think there's a bunch of people in one office trying to talk to somebody else, and they're never going to buy from each other. So I think there's some of that going on. Yes, the companies are definitely on those platforms, and I think there is a need and a requirement to be on there. I mean, to use your example of TikTok, there's a bunch of iron workers and a lot of equipment operators on there. There's a bunch of, there's some really great lot of crane or tower crane activity on a platform like TikTok, and they go on there and they've got the music, sounds great, the visuals are great. So now in terms of buying decision makers, I think perhaps less so on some of these platforms, but it's not necessarily a reason not to be there, because ultimately those people are going to be feeding back, and but I think it definitely would be a mistake to jump wholesale onto those things. I think that's perhaps what your first question was relating to, is kind of how we can overreact or poorly react to the pandemic, and basically just jump somewhere where our audience isn't actually hanging out.
Yeah.
So I think the one word answer to your question is yes, they are, but I think it's got to be a component of a more traditional marketing plan, particularly in this industry. Well, I mean, it's your wheelhouse, and Mark and I, as many listeners will probably know, were from a print publishing background, and you can sense and feel when there's a lot of genuine activity that still happens around a paper journal in our industry. So
sure.
I think it's got to be a mix, and it all depends again on audience, and the size of the company, and how diverse it is. All depends. It might be that for a particular product or service or region, you go after a certain, Mark's well equipped to kind of commentate on this, better equipped than me. But if you start with that product, start with that thing that you're trying to generate interest on, where are the people we want to address with this, where are they hanging out, and how are we going to get there? It might be that 60% of that is on TikTok for that product or service. Another thing, it might be, no, we need to go print with this.
So are you saying spray and pray, or?
Well, no, not really. I'm saying you've got to look. I think you've got to look at what the product is and the service is, what you're trying to do with it, and then try to be as scientific as you can until that science becomes to the detriment of the plan. You can be more scientific now because obviously digital allows us to read and track and everything else. But so no, I think you can be. I think you can be more focused than that. But I definitely think you've got to keep options open.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't believe that the chief buyer, crane buyer at Shell Oil is on Instagram flicking through that every night. I don't. I believe that he's sitting in his office flicking through a copy of a trade magazine.
Agreed.
And he wants information. You know, pictures are great. Pictures look good in articles. You know, we say to our clients, you know, just try and get us some strong images with this press release or this case study because, you know, the editors like it, the designers like it, and it really does sort of enhance the message. But you know, I don't think that, you know, really these people are going through these different social media channels. The other thing is sort of touching on what Rich said. People think that social media is free because you don't have to pay for it, but it isn't free because, you know, it takes up time.
A huge amount of time, right?
And if you're, you know, the sales guy at the company and, you know, you've been targeted with doing X amount of social media posts a day. Rich will tell you, you know, we manage accounts for a lot of clients. It's timely. Also, it's about the sort of quality of your content. And if, you know, you can't make these things up, you know, in a blink of an eye, you've got to sit and think about it.
Yeah.
Social media, everybody thinks that it's all about the followers, how many followers you can get. Again, you know, Rich said it's not that at all. It's target audience, and
Yeah.
You know, you need to establish which platforms are best for your business and stick to those. Don't waste time on the ones that aren't, basically. And also, you know, I read a thing the other day that said that, you know, with all these algorithms, the social media platforms control who sees your message, and it was something. It might have been 3%. It was definitely under 5%.
Okay.
You know, so if you've got 10,000 followers and 8,000 of them are, you know, the lady that you go to gym class with that, you know, it's just a number, isn't it? But if you're only getting to 5% of that 10,000. You know, you've got to make sure that the message you're sending is a strong one.
No, absolutely, and you're not in control of that. The media owners are, of course. I mean, we were chatting with Dave Ayling, weren't we, on the last Lifting Lowdown, Rich, and I think he came up with a solid point, and that was people don't necessarily sit in their lunch breaks or their tea breaks reading the newspaper these days. They'll be on their phones, won't they, and maybe scrolling through TikTok or Instagram or some kind of social media feed. Now that may be personal, but also it may be business related too. But is that the conduit in these days, do you think? I mean, I don't want to oversell social media versus traditional media, because I still think there's a huge market for that and a route to market. But what about the balance? I mean, how would you prescribe the balance to your clients, for example?
Well, the thing is, going back to your original question about an increase on, you know, activity from these companies, I think the problem is that people have, and Richard said it, dived in. You know, you've really got to sort of start with the fundamentals, you know, and it's all about your brand, isn't it? You've got to have brand consistency. You can't do it all through social media. You need to find that balance. You know, when we're talking to new accounts, you know, you said it earlier when we were talking about some of these accounts, you know, content is key now. I think you quoted a friend of yours. You can maybe tell the viewers about that in a second. But, you know, it's really, you know, we say to people, you need a social media presence. Of course you do. But you know, content is king. Your content is valuable. It really does help your business. Not just from sending out articles to trade magazines and getting those published on websites, newsletters, within the pages if you're fortunate enough to, that your editor chooses your article. But it's good. Content's good for your own website. It's great for your SEO. If you get content on other websites with backlinks to your site, that really helps you.
Sure.
And you can say so much in a well constructed press release, much more than you can say in a 50-word message on social media.
Well, something I say to my clients is, you can control your marketing message. For example, you book a full page in Lift Hoist International or Lift Hoist Australasia, you get to design and control that message, right? That's standard, and you pay your money and you get what you expect. But I'm always asking clients and even people who don't advertise with us, send us content. Although we don't guarantee editorial inclusion because we're independent. At the same time, if people read about you in column inches in a magazine, it means that you're there on merit. And that's the content we're trying to talk about, or that's the content we're talking about, correct? How important it is to feed that through to a potential buying base.
It's the only content that Mark and I are here to kind of promote. It's got to be kind of qualitative, and you've got to set out to educate and entertain and inform your audiences. And again, we're
educate, entertain, and inform. There
you go. Look, 100%. You're absolutely right. And if we said about the one consistent truism at the outset of the conversation about audience, and if there's another one that hasn't changed, pandemic or not, it's about the quality of the information and the integrity and authenticity by which you go about things. It hasn't changed. And it's got to be good. I mean, look, the three of us here are obviously preaching to the choir. We have listeners here via your the Lifting Lowdown podcast, but there's still an abundance of poor strategy out there and information that I think lacks a real focal point. And I read. By 8 o'clock in the morning, I've read 15 articles about, kind of industry leading and fastest and best and quickest, all within, very small marketplaces, and I contest the legitimacy of those messages.
Yeah.
The things I'm more interested in reading is how it helps. What does it do that you can't already do? How does it solve a problem? Mark's been talking eloquently there about content, and look, make your content the answers to questions. So that audience that we've spoke about, the need to engage, they've all got questions. How can I do this better? What should I be doing here? If you've got answers, they're literally putting those questions into Google a lot of the time. I mean, Dave Ayling spoke last time about the They Ask You Answer book, which is worth another plug. But it's all based on the power of answering questions, and the tighter that those algorithms get, and the more control that these social media platforms have. The more pressure they're going to put on your content to be original, authentic, and help people out. And it's probably what your editor Maria Hadlow's looking out for as well. It's how your readership has got those questions and they want answers, and that's ultimately what you're trying to deliver, isn't it? So that's what people should be thinking about being a part of. Marketing's one of those words. It conjures up a lot of kind of people get very forceful with their message, don't they? We've got to tell them how good we are and how much we're better than our competitors, and that isn't what audiences want. They want help, and they want to be led, and they want to look for solutions.
Well, these guys are time-pressed professionals, right? At the end of the day.
Absolutely right, they are, and they're getting an abundance of information now. That you spoke about, you touched upon it. There were people how much time they get, spare 5 minutes, and they pick up their cell phones now, and on that is dozens of apps, their email, their WhatsApp, their social media, and they're all bleeping at them. So to expect someone who's got more information than they can ever digest to want to give time and take on a piece of information that effectively just says, I'm the best thing since sliced bread, I think it's incredibly naive. I wouldn't say arrogant, because I don't think it's necessarily, it is I think it's much more, there's more ignorance at play here. And I just think it's about just kind of understanding how important it is to respect the audience, and acknowledge that you've got to you've got to be seriously professional, and you've got to work incredibly hard to command the respect of people, that they actually look for your messages. And you're not going to emerge from the crowd if you're just saying what everybody else is, particularly if it's questionable on merit. Do you know what I mean?
Fair enough. I mean, Mark, you've sat both sides of the court, so to speak. Obviously, previously you've run magazines, been publisher of publications, and now you're working on the media side of things. I mean, if a client comes to you now in your capacity as director of Bridger House consultancy, what's the perfect mix you would present to them? Is there such a thing?
Well, it is quite interesting being on the other side of the fence, so to speak. And to digress slightly, one of the main reasons that we formed the company was that when we were working on the trade magazines, Rich, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Rich, but Rich was, constantly moaning about the quality of the content.
Can't believe it, mate. Moaning.
The quality of the content.
Not like you, Rich.
That was coming across his desk, and we just saw a gap, not just in this market, in every market. People need help.
Yeah.
So that's really, that was the main, focus of when we set the company up, is who could we help, And some of the companies that we work with don't have marketing departments. They're very successful people, grassroots businesses, they've built up because they're smart.
Yeah.
And a lot of these companies have got where they are.
Providing a solution to a problem.
Absolutely, and a lot of these companies have sort of gotten where they are today without much sort of marketing, and so they want to learn, and that's the people that we like working with, the ones that want to learn.
I think what you're pushing for, Guy, and I get it, and it's the golden question, isn't it? So does Bridger House kind of have the answer that this percentage you need to put on print advertising, this many hours you need to spend on social media, this is how many press releases you send a month? And we don't have that answer, and be very, very wary of the PR guys who tell you they know what that is, because it doesn't exist.
They're going to get you 1 million followers.
They probably will, Twitter, and they're probably very good at putting, pie charts in slide decks. They've probably got beanbags in the basement as well. There isn't that. It's not scientific, but where you can produce something of a plan is if somebody comes to us. So to make your question easy to answer, if they've got a product that's got a target audience, then we can make a plan for it. And it might be that doesn't go anywhere near social media. It might be it's predominantly social media. If there's certain buzzwords within the plan, if it's a product for construction, okay, so what does it do within construction? It's construction magazines. We can use certain hashtags. We can look at the trends that are in that industry and how we can, attach ourselves to them. So there's not you've got to put the product, the solution, the service first, and then look at who you're trying to convert. you can't say that these days we're putting 40% of our resources into print and 60 onto socials, and it doesn't, it just doesn't work like that. You've just got to boil it down into little. Each product is a case study in itself, and you've got to work your way through.
I was going to go a little bit further back than that, and when we get brought into some of these companies, the examples I was giving, about time someone got me a beer, isn't it?
Too much.
Am I? It really is, and I said it right at the start, it's really about the fundamentals, People are going to look at your websites, your LinkedIn, your social media, your adverts. It's really about brand consistency across the platforms. And you need a marketing plan, you need a strategy at the start. There's no point, you start with a blank sheet of paper and you work a plan out.
Yeah.
And I said to you guys earlier, I was on a podcast, a webinar the other day with Thomas Nett, and it was, very educational. But they had a fabulous quote up there from Jeff Bezos, or Bezos, as the Americans would probably say. And it was, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Yeah, and that really sort of stuck with me. It was one of those that I wish I'd come up with it.
Mind you, he's grown a...
Well, he seemingly knows what he's talking about.
$1 trillion business.
Yeah. But that's really it. It is, it's so important that you're consistent. You've got your employees, or you can be your marketing team. It's
absolutely.
Not just having the responsibility on one person.
And largely they are, right? I mean, whether they're wearing t-shirts, if they're going to inspect a job, or they're on a trade show floor, flying the flag, so to speak, carrying your brand. I mean,
absolutely, and back to social media, we really try and encourage. Our client Rope and Sling are brilliant at it. LinkedIn, they've got everybody's, has a profile. Their profiles are well written. They're supporting their company, and if we put a post up on LinkedIn for Rope and Sling, all of their clients are sharing it. All of their sales force or employees are sharing it. And their clients as well. But they get really good engagement from that, and they're inviting their contacts to follow the Rope and Sling page. They're building that, building that platform collectively. They're all getting a lot out of it, a lot of enjoyment, and it isn't, we do like LinkedIn,
I think LinkedIn's a fantastic commodity. I don't mind admitting that I'll be looking at it at some strange hour of the day, and and I'll get a news item that just pops across from Australia, and and before we know it, we're contacting said company, and it appears in the pages of Lift Hoist Australasia or on the website. And this is what I'm trying to get at, I guess. Not wanting to do down printed publications such as ours, but there are so many other ways also, aren't there, that you can actually engage your audience these days, and it's about, I guess, not wasting your time but maximising your effort.
And have a look at on LinkedIn. Have a look at the engagement and likes and comments of the real authentic content that's on there, and use it as a signpost. If you're going to post something on there that we're the industry leading provider of this product, you might get 2 or 3 likes on it, and if you actually put something on there that's meaningful and helpful and entertaining or educational, you're going to get a lot more engagement, and you just have to look at go through the post and have a look, compare what be honest, expose yourself to it, have a look at what you've been posting and the level of engagement, and compare it to other people, and what have they been doing that's worked well or otherwise. It is a good platform, LinkedIn, but it's still being relatively poorly poorly used by a lot of people. So yeah, look, these are tools, aren't they? I still think all of these things, your magazine, social media, they're all just tools. And Mark used the word plan, and within that plan, you have the tools to make the plan work.
Yeah.
And that's all they are. They're not. It's what are you trying to nail in? You got to bang a nail into the wall. What do I need to do it? Okay, so I need a hammer to do that. And that's what they are. And you just got to keep reminding yourself. I know I probably repeated it a thousand times in this podcast alone, but you just got to keep reminding yourself who the audience is. And whatever is going on peripheral to that is kind of largely irrelevant, I think.
So if you're going to try and generate a new audience or reach out to a new audience, how would you go about that? Would you drill down and find a specific established magazine, for example, or would you go through a different sort of route?
Definitely look for an established magazine.
Or more than one.
This question for Mark, really, but yeah, absolutely. So if you've got a product that's in, I don't know, we did a campaign recently for a product that was in aquaculture, relatively new to us, and so it was a case of, so Mark went away and looked at the magazines relevant to that sector and look at their readerships, because within those readerships is the different layers, and you've got to respect supply chain. So is a magazine going to manufacturers and OEMs? Because is it going to builders and distributors? Is it going to end users? Is it trying to do a mixture of all of the above? So yeah, absolutely, magazines always. And I was at an event, way back when we could go to in-person events. I was at a small business event, and there was a question for the panel, and this person operated in a relatively niche marketplace, and they said, look, how can I get national news coverage? How can I address a widespread mass audience? And the panel, rightly just polite and courteous, but they just said, look, what on earth do you want to engage a mass national audience for? You need to, if a national newspaper goes to, however 10,000 people, there'll be 4 of them who actually care about your product. Where do those 4 people, what else do those 4 people read as well as their daily news? They're going to be in chat rooms relative to your market sectors. So that's where you need to focus on. It's not about the quick win. What's the point of having national, not that a journalist or national newspaper would give it to you, but what's the point of having column inches in a national newspaper if you were trying to engage someone at the coalface of a very niche trade? It's just you've got to have that focal point.
Mark, do you want to add to
that? Yeah, Rich covered it well. I knew he was going to say aquaculture, because if I'm brutally honest, when the client first mentioned it, I didn't have a clue what it was.
Okay.
I know quite a lot about it now, and
it's painting with water, isn't it?
Something like that. Yeah. Painting with numbers. And it was actually quite amazing how many publications there were out there. Some are really, really good, others not so good. There's quite a few digital magazines in that marketplace, fish farming, books, etc., etc. But going back to what Rich said, we do a lot of research into magazines, more when we're media buying, and we're very scientific on our media buying and which magazines we put forward to our clients. I love looking for a BPA certificate or an ABC certificate. There's a lot of magazines that stand by them, and actually, I was going to swear then, but they actually end up exposing themselves. I had one last year. Sales manager was really proud that he had his new ABC certificate, and then when I looked at it, only 3% of the issues were requested.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry.
That's not going to cut the mustard.
No.
You've got to be a niche geek, haven't you, to enjoy looking through magazine audit certificates? But it's what we
you work with him.
No, it's what we do. We did say we rarely catch up at the start. You wonder why. But yeah, no. Look, that was a fascinating sector to get involved in, and what was interesting. Look, within that sector, at the risk of boring your listeners, there are products that lend themselves more to certain current flows of water because it's harder to take the fish farm further offshore, right?
Okay.
But the further offshore it is, the healthier the fish, within reason.
That makes sense.
Because of the water flow and the oxygen
yeah.
in the water and everything else. But of course, that places more demand on the rigging hardware and the mooring and all those kind of things, doesn't it?
Well, you dug me out.
Yeah. But when you're trying to promote this, it goes back to that point, doesn't it? When you're trying to promote that kind of equipment into that market, what's the point of that being on BBC News?
Well, hang on a second, because I've just had a brain fart. I mean, how do you promote that in a 1-minute video on Instagram or a TikTok
You can't.
video? I mean, how do you get that message across? Because that's quite complex, right? So you've got to condense that somehow and make it understandable across all of these different buying levels.
You probably don't put it on a 1-minute video. That's probably the point. You do look.
You
at
need an
more,
in-depth article.
Yeah, you do need to be more. You need to respect and look at the problems they're trying to solve. And it's about going out. How can we kind of keep our nets and our fish secure and safe when they're offshore? How can we deal with tides and currents? And what equipment can we use? And where can we find it? And the way of tapping into a little hack, if you like, of the way of getting into these audiences, have a play around with the hashtags. Look at kind of fish farming and aquaculture and water currents. Have a look at and try and get in, immerse yourself. Sorry, get into
lifting Lowdown or a fishing.
I know.
Fishing.
We're all going to go off and
get into that. Get into those.
Get
into that marketplace, and you'll probably find when you do your research in it that you're not going to go back to the client, as Mark and I didn't, and say the best thing you can do is come up with a 1-minute video on this, because it's probably not going to have the.
It's not going to fly.
No, it's
you can use your social. Like I said, get a strategy in place, and then decide. How many press releases you want to produce a month, a year. What percentage of your turnover you're going to spend on advertising.
And written well, of course.
Yeah. And, which social media accounts do you want to be on? And then, like I said, you build your brand, but you can interact all of those. It's okay. If you've got what we like doing is getting column inches in your magazine, guys.
Sure.
And when we get them, we push those links out through social media. We use that content through social media. It's a much better message, isn't it? Get into it. You've got a great readership, but you can only print and send out so many magazines each month. I know you've got your digital readership, but we feel it's important to support the publications that support our clients. We use our LinkedIn to help promote the magazines that are that are working with us, and collectively we all try and help each other, don't we?
No, we do. No, absolutely. And I mean, and I think that kind of comes back almost full circle, because my opinion personally is that there are all of these tools out there, and you have to use all of those tools to actually get the job finished, right? So we are running out of time, I'm afraid, guys. But I mean, just to wrap this up, is there a list of do's and don'ts? Are there any rules that you should follow? Anything you should definitely not do? I mean,
we haven't got time.
don't. I tell you what, Mark's right, but don't tell people you're the best at what you do. You've got to work hard to make them walk away feeling that you are. So you've got to give them confidence in that.
Sound advice.
And apply. Look, it's called social media for a reason, right? So what would you and wouldn't you do, to use your do's and don'ts, what wouldn't you do in a social environment? You wouldn't go up to someone, well, some people do, and what do you think of them? But when they go to a party and say, you know, I'm great, I'm the funniest person here, I'm the best company, I earn the most money, well, you immediately recoil, don't you? You don't want to spend time with that person. So don't be that.
That's a very valid point.
Don't be that company on social media. Think about the way you're approaching someone. You wouldn't immediately say hello to someone and sell them your stuff, would you?
A softened approach.
Yeah, 100%.
Softened but informed.
Yeah, I mean, you don't walk up to somebody and open your camera and say, look, I just had fish and chips with mushy peas this evening.
Where's this going?
I know. I don't want to go on LinkedIn and see what some guys. He's just had a kebab.
Sure.
You know, okay.
I'm with you now. Yeah.
You know where I'm going with it.
Yeah.
So you know, and you've got to really think about what you post. Something that you would want to read.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that's really, you've got to think about it. It's, you know, there's so many people are, oh, crap, I need to do a post today. What can I do? You know, and you snap, you know, Sally in the office. Sally's busy doing a quote, you know.
Well, that's quite often the case, I think, with certain platforms, is that, you know, it's almost like an afterthought, isn't it? And all of a sudden you see something come across some social media feed and...
because they feel that they're under pressure.
Yeah.
You've got to do 5 posts a day. Well, no, you don't need to do 5 posts a day.
You don't have to be 5 bad posts.
Yeah.
Think of the content first. If the ideas come to you first, then it's probably a good idea to post it. If you're staring at a blank Twitter box and you've got that Twitter block, then come off there. That's not what it's for. It's kind of you said Twitter's kind of I did post a tweet, you know, this week I think. So they market themselves as a kind of a look at this wow kind of real time platform. You can actually use it a little bit more historically than that, I've found, by, you know, you could kind of say, remember when this happened and kind of refer back to things. But forgive me, Guy, if I use the word audience one more time, just to say, would the audience thank you for pressing post on what you're about to put live? Do you know what I mean? So ask yourself that. Are they going to be grateful for you sharing this piece of information? And if it's helpful and educational, and if the guy's in aquaculture, and if it was about this rope can deal with this amount of currents and it's proved useful in improving fish stocks and survival rates, then absolutely they'll thank you.
Yeah.
If it's to say we've come up with a fanciful solution that's got no substance to it, then of course they won't.
No, and I think that's solid.
I just want to add one last thing. You know, like I said, there's a lot of people just delving into marketing, you know. And before you start, get some advice and some help. And I'm not saying, you know, saying that you need to call us. You know, there's a lot of other companies out there. There's some really good books. There's some really good blogs, you know, webinars. But get a real understanding of it and listen to that advice and go with what the professionals are telling you.
Yeah.
You know, and just to use another sort of client as an example, you know, we started working with the Caldwell Group in the United States, and they're a fantastic company, you know, but they didn't really have a marketing strategy. They didn't really know where to start. And they've really listened to us, you know, they've taken it on board, they've thrown arguments at us, which, you know, we've batted away and made them understand, you know, like I said before, the fundamentals. But, you know, I have a regular weekly phone call with Darren at the company. We talk about content, we talk about strategy, we talk about products, you know, we're planning stuff, we get exclusive articles for them. we had a front cover in your magazine, which is fantastic. But,
Indeed.
you know, really, just to end it, you've got to get some advice and listen to what people are telling you.
Yeah.
And listen to this podcast.
Well, no, indeed. And I don't think we've really addressed all of the issues that you may face as a emerging company or even an established company that's faced with all these different social media approaches. I mean, you know, I think it's a veritable minefield, and that's one of the reasons why I thought we'd just, you know, crack on over the mic and have a quick chat about this, because I mean, there isn't a straightforward formula to get to the end of this game, is there? At the end of the day,
there's not. And I think your listeners, you know, they can challenge us on this and ask us questions on it, because we could do, you know, podcasts on social media specifically, and do's and don'ts on different platforms, and
we'd be open to that.
Absolutely, and what it takes to be successful in getting column inches, and how you do this and that, and you know, I'd urge your listeners to get in touch with you and say, this is my specific challenges, or this is what we've got coming up, because you know, all you've done here, this has been a very spontaneous kind of broad look at this, isn't it? But as kind of most of these podcasts prove, is they kind of open a lot of doors to other content, don't they?
Absolutely. I mean, it will go out as we've just recorded it, so as it always does. So I don't know what we've said until I play it back, but hopefully there's been some common sense said in the last 35 minutes or so, and
I'm sure our aquaculture listeners are going to be thrilled with it.
Possibly. But look, guys, as ever, thank you very much. Especially welcome back again, Mark. It's great to see you, mate. It's great to see you too, Rich.
Thanks for having me.
Zoom calls are fantastic, aren't they? But it's nice to meet up finally in person. And thanks for hosting me at your offices.
It's been great, Guy. I love your microphone. Bring it again.
You're always welcome.
Well, thank you very much. I'll have to
bring the beers next time.
Well, yes, indeed. I'll probably have to stick a picture of the microphone on our LHI Instagram account now. But anyway, I'll leave it there. Thanks a lot, guys.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
cheers.
Good
Bye.
Luck. Thank you.
A big thanks to Mark and Rich for receiving me at their offices. On a personal note, it was great to catch up with the lads in an albeit socially distanced face-to-face meeting. I hope that this episode, as with every edition of Lifting Lowdown, has provided food for thought and offered some advice, or at least served to entertain. As ever, feel free to leave comments or present any questions for me and our guests. Your feedback and suggestions for future editions will enable us to make this podcast even more relevant and interesting. You can keep up to date with the latest industry news by visiting LHI's website, liftandhoist.com. Thanks for listening, and look out for the next episode in a couple of weeks. Until then, stay safe.